So I want to take a look at some key differences between Joe Barry, how he's operated his defenses over the past few seasons, and Jeff Hafley, new Packers defensive coordinator. And I came across some very interesting tweets from Ben Fennell here on Twitter, and here's what he has to say, and then I'll give my thoughts. He says this: so new Packers DC Jeff Hafley. First things that immediately stand out on BC Boston College defense film that differ from Joe Barry general philosophy. Third down man coverage, 6-man pressure concepts. Definitely more man coverage coming. The last 2 seasons, Packers played man coverage concepts 32.5% of the time on third down, which was 22nd in the NFL. Boston College played man coverage concepts on third down a staggering 63.1%, second highest in FBS, 133 teams total. So that's nearly double the rate that the Packers played man coverage on third down in 2022 and 2023. And so if that continues, if the way that Hafley called plays in college continues to the Packers when he comes in this next season, then we're going to see a lot more man from the Packers on third down. And the only thing that makes me wonder is, are the Packers built for that right now? If we look at the Packers, their corners, their secondary, are they sort of, I think, set up for success being a man coverage team, or do they need to add some more pieces here, maybe in the draft at corner or in the safety at secondary? And I was curious to see how PFF had the Packers corners ranked when it came to man coverage. PFF isn't perfect, but I think it gives you a good idea generically of where these guys rank among the NFL. And if we look at the Packers corners and their man coverage grade ranks, Jair Alexander 30th in the NFL, and I think we've seen over the years, Jair has found a lot of success, especially when we look at 2022. The first game against the Vikings, Jair didn't really follow Justin Jefferson. The next game, he was matched up on him a lot more. And we saw a massive change from Jair, pretty much locking down Justin Jefferson in a big way in the second game. And I think that Jair is the kind of player who wants that opportunity to go and man up with guys and be that tough physical corner that he is. And so he's still, one of the best corners, I would say, in the NFL. I think this past season, his injuries definitely hurt him, and at times he was not playing at his top tier level. But we saw him start to get it all back, especially against the Cowboys in that game where he had that interception. Next, we have Keyshawn Nixon, who is 43rd in the NFL. He is going to be a free agent. I do think we should keep Keyshawn Nixon. I think that he is still a solid starting level corner there in the slot. And he's still been, 43rd in the NFL. Not too bad considering nowadays there's typically, 3 corners on the field at a time, maybe 2, depending on the formation they have out there. And then Corey Ballantyne, 69th, not great. Carrington Valentine, 99th in the NFL in his man coverage grade per PFF. And I think that Carrington Valentine does have some room to grow, and I think that considering he's a young rookie, we shouldn't expect him to be where he was last season. And honestly, there was a lot this year that I loved from Carrington Valentine. He's a tough physical corner, and I do wonder, if he's given the ability to get up there in wide receivers' faces, play more press man, if he's able to use that physicality to his advantage, but still, according to PFF, not the best man coverage corner. If we look at safety, Rudy Ford was the top graded Packers safety in man coverage, 20th in the NFL. He's going to be a free agent. Darnell Savage, 43rd in the NFL. He's going to be a free agent. And then Jonathan Owens, 56th. He is also going to be a free agent. So the Packers have a lot of big decisions to make in the safety room. I would guess they bring back one of those guys. I'm probably going to put out a video tomorrow predicting who the Packers keep in free agency, who they don't keep. Right now, I haven't full-on made up my mind, but there's a lot of decisions there at safety. And I want to read something else Brian Gutekunst had to say about safety. I have one of these quotes here from his prior press conference. And he was saying that there's a lot of potential safeties out there, not only in free agency, but also in the draft. He said this: initially pretty solid at safety as far as the draft class goes, and then the free agency class as well. We're going to have to add numbers there for sure. So I would be shocked if the Packers don't draft a safety and potentially add one in free agency. And I do think the Packers secondary is an area where they're going to load up in the draft. If you listen to some of Brian Gutekunst's comments on the secondary play in general, it makes it sound like he wants to take some strides forward there. He said this: I thought we played pretty consistent football in the front 7. I think the back end is probably where we weren't as consistent as we needed to be, and I'd like that to be shored up. There will probably be some moving pieces that going into next year, but it's kind of like it always is. I want a fast, physical, aggressive defense that plays sound. So I think that if Hafley comes in and, calls the same amount of man coverage plays as he did in college, the Packers, while I think they have some nice pieces already, are going to need to bolster the secondary, not only in the draft, but also in free agency. And then Ben Fennell continues here saying this: more aggressive, possible with more cover zero. 2023 Packers defense, cover zero, 1.4% of the time, 31st in the NFL. Red zone cover zero, 4.5% of the time, 32nd in the NFL. 2023 Boston College defense, cover zero, 8.4% of the time, 38th out of 133. And then red zone cover zero, 27.4% of the time, 43rd, 133. So that's nearly 4, 5, 6 times as much cover zero when you compare the Packers defense to Boston College's defense. And that, of course, is, one deep safety. The other guy's playing man, which means a lot more pressure on the quarterback, which I think when you look at the Packers team, they were one of the worst in the NFL when it came to forcing takeaways. If you look at that stat, they were 25th in takeaways per game at 1.1. They were 31st in interceptions at 7. Only the Titans had less than them at 6. Look at the top of the teams in the NFL when it came to interceptions. Bears 22, 49ers 22, Ravens and Bills both with 18. And so I think that if Jeff Hafley does come in and play more cover zero, the Packers are going to get a lot more pressure on the quarterback. They're going to play a lot more man, as I said, and that could lead to a lot more turnover opportunities. There's more guys consistently blitzing the quarterback, while at the same time, when you only have one safety deep, we know Joe Barry liked to have 2, keep things in front of him. So while that did allow for a lot of, short gains underneath, they could allow a lot more of those deep plays because they're not, sitting back with 2 deep safeties. And so while the Packers could force some more turnovers and also get some more consistent pressure on the quarterback, that could leave them a little bit more, at risk to be beat deep on the back end if they play a lot more cover zero. And then continuing here, Ben Fennell says this: these 6-man pressure concepts have a ton of movement, many times multiple game twists. Love looping the linebackers together. Could be good Quay Walker role. They will use the nickel pressures to overload a protection side. Force the ball out in red zone. Lots of red zone cover zero, but notice guys do get beat in coverage, but forcing the QB to find it and make quick/right decision puts stress on offenses. Packers have to find more ways to attack QBs/pockets with their most explosive players. Defensive back blitzing. Packers in 2023, 2.6%, 32nd in the NFL. So the lowest rate of defensive back blitzing in the NFL. Boston College in 2023, 15.2%. So that is nearly, 6 times as much as the Packers. And so I think we should expect a lot more defensive back blitzing if Hafley keeps it up. He continues, notice good amount of nickel/slot pressures, often dropping backside, defensive end, and more safeties lurking around a line of scrimmage. Now he continues here, it's important to reminder, more aggressive, man coverage, heavy pressure concepts, etc. doesn't imply a better defense. This style has pros and cons like every scheme. So as we talked about last week, it does sound like this defense is probably going to be a lot more aggressive than we have seen in years past, and those stats sort of carry on that theme that there's going to be a lot more blitzing, probably from defensive backs, a lot more man coverage, which should lead, I think, to a more exciting defense, a defense that is going to force a lot more turnovers, getting a lot more pressure on the quarterback. But as he said, there's going to be pros and cons. Without playing that 2 deep safety, could be a lot more, deep passes allowed potentially. And we can't necessarily take everything he did in college because he's talked about the importance of adapting to the NFL level, and so we may not see the same tendencies that we saw from him in college. But considering the crazy amount he was blitzing, playing cover zero, you would expect that would in some way carry over to the NFL. Even if it's not quite as much as he did in college, it will likely be more than Joe Barry, where some of those ranks, defensive back blitzing, cover zero, things like that, were pretty much bottom in the NFL. It's probably going to be a lot more under Jeff Hafley. So I think that you're going to need to decide, depending on your matchup, if you're facing off against a guy like Mahomes, you probably don't want to sit there and blitz him all day long, play too much cover zero, considering Mahomes is incredible versus the blitz, can pick you apart. And I think we saw some defenses shift to the more, 2 deep safeties because of guys like Mahomes with the nonstop explosive plays he was having earlier in his career. And so it's definitely going to come down to who they're facing, but it sounds like there's going to be a lot of blitzing, a lot of trying to confuse opposing quarterbacks, whereas that wasn't as prevalent under Joe Barry. But that is it for this video. If you like more Packers content like this, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.